Hotspot Shield service makes your internet browsing safer, more secure, and fully private. Click now to learn more. At CES this year, Corsair expected the 250D to be the star of the show. But like many other members of the press, when I walked into the room, my eyes went straight to the Graphite 760T, a stunning case that fuses smart design with a big departure from Corsair's traditional aesthetic. The box it comes in is huge, which wouldn't have been a problem for me if Corsair hadn't sent me two of them, so now I have a pile of 760Ts for some reason. And the box contains excellent soft foam packing material to keep your case safe all the way to your door. Now, normal people, once they get it out, might look at their brand new case and think, wow, that looks really sexy. But my first thought was actually, wow, structural integrity must have been a real challenge here. Normally, the screws and tightness of the fit of the metal side panels will add some extra strength and rigidity to the case, but by its nature, a huge piece of plexi like this is going to have some serious flex to it, even with the engineering that obviously went into building each side panel. Couple that with the chassis itself having less metal to accommodate that large window, and by extension more flex than normal, and it's a recipe for disaster, right? Wrong. Given that they're only attached with little hinges at the back and magnets at the front, the panels do more than I would have thought possible for the strength and rigidity of the chassis, and with them in place, well, you gotta close it, I guess. With them in place, it actually feels very solid. All right, so the next natural step on our tour of the outside is the side panels. Both panels on the 760T have acrylic window panels on them, even though the right side is opaque, so you don't actually see the rat's nest of cables most system builders leave back there. They snap into place with magnets and a latch, and they're opened with a comfortable, solid-feeling handle. They swing all the way open to be out of your way if you need to get into the system, and if you need to do some serious maintenance on the system, you can just pop them off their posts and remove them completely. I love the design here. Functional and beautiful. Top marks, Corsair. Front I/O is nothing groundbreaking. Power, reset, power and drive indicator LEDs are all accompanied by two USB 2 ports and two USB 3 ports, and then there's a fan controller toggle that leads to 4 internal 3-pin fan headers. I'm not really that fond of toggle switches since it's hard to tell at a glance what setting it's on and hard to adjust correctly without looking at it compared to a more tactile switch type, but I think it is a great inclusion. One other improvement that Corsair could also make is to hook up the fan leads out of the factory. NZXT does this, and it's a really nice touch when your case arrives and all your fans and cooling is basically ready to rock if you plug in one power connector. So with all that said though, I'm really glad to see it there. Just watch out if you're buying the lower cost 730T. It is not included on that one. A stealthed optical at the front is something that I haven't really seen that much these days. Most manufacturers just keep putting 5¼ bays in the front of the case, but acting like they don't really expect you to use them. Good on Corsair for making the front of my case look good with or without an optical drive. If we could see the envelope pushed even further so that 5¼ bay cover is completely stealth, and maybe there's just like a pressure sensitive bottom corner you press on or something and it flips down, that would be fantastic. But either way, I'm still glad to see that because some people do still use optical drives. The front fan filter feels solid and is easy to remove. Unfortunately, one of the clips did break on mine, but I would chalk this up to bad luck, and it's an easy fix if it happens to you. Just contact customer service and they'll ship you a new front piece. Every time I've dealt with Corsair's RMA department, the experience has been really solid. The bottom fan filter for the power supply is functional. See, slides out of the back, but much less impressive to me now that I've seen the magnetic filter implementation on the 450D. Way to make your own product look bad, Corsair, because that one is awesome, basically magic. And speaking of magic or magnets, the magnetic plastic cover on the top is very tastefully done. The angled shape at the front makes it look more like a futuristic design choice rather than just a practical way of choosing between a cleaner plain top versus a more cooling friendly ventilated top. Also of note is that the color matches really, really well. And knowing Corsair, this is not an accident. They spend a lot of time on color matching behind the scenes, so they should continue to match not only out of the box, but for years to come. Owners of early NZXT Phantoms will know what a problem plastic fading out faster than the paint on metal can be. At the back, we find 9 PCI slots, which seemed like an odd choice at first, but George came to the rescue and explained it allows 3-way SLI with triple slot cards. And I was like, okay. And also said maybe we'll see some more XL-ATX motherboard designs in the next generation of products. So, gotcha, George. The 140mm fan and ample cable management room at the back means that the chassis is quite wide, but I see why they had to put so much cable management room into it. Normally, with a metal side panel that really locks into place and you can kind of like pile up the cables behind it and then just like force it down, that'll work. But with this one, that panel would bow like crazy if you tried to put too many wires piled up behind it. So they just had to give you a lot of room to make sure that you didn't end up stuck trying to do that. Inside, we see that in addition to the XL-ATX compatibility, the case will work with eATX boards, but full width enthusiast eATX boards basically don't exist anymore, so I can see why they didn't bother to do 2 full sets of cable management grommets like on the 800D, even though it is compatible. Since I'm talking about these things, grommets here, they are well positioned and use a high quality material, but given that Corsair popularized what is now basically the industry standard in cable routing holes, we haven't seen much further innovation since the 800D. I mean, what about making things even cleaner with like angle shaped ones that fit into these little spaces along the top or something like that? Do it, Corsair. That would be absolutely awesome. And I mentioned this before, but there is tons of cable management room in the back and a metric butt ton of wire loops on the back. This is really important because it helps you keep things nice and tidy back there. I would say the only place where cable management really needs a bit of improvement is around the 2.5-inch drive bays. These mounts back here are spring-loaded and super handy, but even though the SATA power implementation on this power supply is fairly standard, it was hard to route the power connectors from one cage to another. And also, while I appreciate that Corsair wanted to leave the area pretty open so I could show off my sexy Neutron GTX SSDs, they didn't give me a good way to hide the cables that are going into the SSDs or for the front fans, although those ones are quite small. It's just a bit of an oversight on a chassis with an enormous window for a side panel. But it's a very, very minor complaint. Another thing that I will leave up to you guys, whether I'm being divatastic or not, is the front panel connectors internally are covered with a nice heavy black sleeving, but the wires inside are not black, and that's visible when you plug it into the board. Usually, Corsair's attention to detail is what sets them so far apart from the others, but this is something that they've done in the past that is missing here, black wires. All right, moving on to the rest of the drive cages. I'm not a huge fan of Corsair's 3.5-inch drive cages. They're toolless and easy to use, but I wish they were a little bit more robust on top of being modular. The 760T includes 2 of them that you can put side by side in the bottom. You can hang from the 5.25-inch bays, or you can stack up from the front, and you can add another 2 for a total of 12 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch drives to go in there, along with the spring-loaded ones. The 760T is super roomy inside, and water cooling support is a very strong point. I would be surprised if it takes longer than a few weeks for an end user to cut up the 5.25-inch bays to allow a triple 140mm radiator in the top, because the mounting holes are there. But on paper, it supports a 360 or 280 in the top, a 240 or 280 in the front, a 120 or 140 in the back, and a 120 in the bottom. Nice. It makes me sad, though, that the top fan/radiator mounts don't get any airflow with this top magnetic piece in place. A small gap around the outside edges would allow at least some air through, but I guess it would also ruin the extremely clean look of the chassis when it's covered. So I don't know what the right solution is here. Guys, let me know in the comments if you'd prefer a gap when it's closed so those fans can breathe a little bit, or if you'd prefer to just have the choice. Okay, I want completely clean or completely open, and I'm okay with that. Last thing I noticed that pretty much sums up my feelings on the 700T is this corner brace right here. It represents the compromises that were made from a rigidity perspective to deliver an aggressive and yet not over the top and ricey looking aesthetic. It's part of the reinforcement solution that they needed to make this case work at all. With the panels off, there's still too much flex in this case for me to be okay with Corsair calling it an Obsidian class product. But I'm totally okay with it as a graphite product, and overall the quality foam packing and the wonderful aesthetic that couldn't be achieved without compromising on its ability to be used as a chair for a hippo is a trade-off that I'm willing to make. I should mention that the 730T is also available, but in my opinion it's worth the extra for the 760T. You get the fan controller, you get the windowed side panels, which to me are what really make this case work, and I think that's pretty much it. Guys, thank you for watching my video review of the Corsair 760T. Don't forget to like this video and share it if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, leave a comment, and let me know your thoughts on the aesthetic of this case. I hope we have some really good footage in here so you guys can get a really great idea of what it looks like in person. I mean, sometimes that's the challenge, is things don't look as good in video as they do in person, and this one really does look fantastic in person. Also, we've got a support link in the video description, so you can use that to, buy a t-shirt, for example, give us a kickback when you buy stuff on Amazon by changing your bookmark, or even give us a monthly contribution to help us keep making these videos for you. And I think that pretty much wraps it up, guys. Thank you for watching, and as always, don't forget to subscribe.